the journey to find self-value after years of being forgotten in the family. Mia always remembers that fateful morning, a spring morning when her father suddenly died. Mia, who was only 6 years old at the time, was running into the kitchen to help her father flip the smiley pancakes he used to make on Sundays. But instead of the familiar laughter, she heard the sound of the shovel falling to the floor and saw her father hugging his chest, his face grimacing in pain. It all followed in a mess: ambulance sirens, white hospital corridors, and images of her mother sobbing. Father is gone, leaving an unfillable void in the lives of mother and daughter. As time passed, Mia's mother joined a support group for single parents and met David, a kind man with a warm smile. A year later, they got married, and David moved in with his mother and daughter. Things seemed to be getting better, but then an unexpected announcement changed everything. Mia's mother was pregnant. When Ben was born, Mia's mother gave all her attention to the boy. "Ben needs you," she used to say, seemingly forgetting that Mia needed her too. The lunches were forgotten, the conversations were no longer patient enough. Mia's mother began to revolve around Ben, leaving Mia to fend for herself. Even so, David still tries to balance. He spent time taking Mia to karate lessons and cheering her on during competitions. But every time he tries to convince his mother to pay more attention to Mia, she reacts harshly, saying that David doesn't understand Ben's specialness. And just like that, the distance between Mia and her mother grew bigger and bigger. When Ben was born, everything in the family began to change. Mia's mother, from a dedicated teacher, suddenly quit her job to take care of Ben wholeheartedly. The first years of life are very important, she often told people as an excuse for her being completely centered around the boy. But while Ben was well cared for, Mia, an 8-year-old girl at the time, had to take care of herself. Mom often forgot to make lunch for her and was always busy with Ben's doctor's appointments. When Mia mentioned this, her mother only responded with a familiar sentence: "Mom is too busy, I understand. Ben needs his mother." David, Mia's stepfather, realized that. He tries to make up for it by spending time with Mia, taking her to karate class and cheering her on during competitions. But his efforts were always rejected by Mia's mother. "I don't understand," she often said. "Ben is very sensitive. I just want the best for my son." As Ben got older, the bias became more apparent. Whenever Ben is lazy or messes up the house, Mom always turns to Mia with expectant eyes. "Mia, I'll help you clean Ben's room," she said, not as a request, but as an order. David has repeatedly voiced his opposition. "Mia is not a maid," he said bluntly. But every argument always ends with tears from the mother and the accusation: "I love her more than my own son." When Ben turned 5 years old, his mother's attention to the boy spiraled out of control, making him the center of the family, and Mia was left with the role of a bystander. Ben is getting older, and Mia's mother seems to be obsessed with protecting the boy. She didn't let Ben engage in any activities she considered dangerous, like baseball or even running around the field. "My son is very sensitive. He needs special care," Mia's mother often said. But instead of helping Ben learn to be independent, she did everything for him, from cleaning the room to doing his homework. Every time Ben made a mess or refused to do anything, Mom turned to Mia with a familiar look. "Mia, please help me clean Ben's room. I know how busy you are," she said, her voice not waiting for a refusal. David, Mia's stepfather, has repeatedly voiced his opposition. "Ben needs to learn to take responsibility for himself," he said. But those times always ended in tears from the mother and the accusation. "You don't understand my son." After many rejections, David gradually withdrew from the arguments, and Mia clearly felt that she was the only one left behind in the family. Even so, Mia still has David as a silent supporter. He always tried to compensate for her by cheering at karate competitions and helping her prepare for the future. When Mia graduated from high school, David secretly saved money so she could go to college without worrying about the cost. "You can go anywhere," he said, his eyes full of pride. Mia chooses a distant university, determined to start a new life again. When she moved into the dorm, her mother couldn't see her off because Ben needs you at home. But with David by her side, Mia knew she had enough motivation to step out of her family's shadow and start building a future of her own. Going to college is a door to free Mia from the stifling life in her family. She chooses a distant school where she can live independently and get rid of the role of sister in charge that her mother has always imposed on her. When David saw her off at the dorm, he smiled and said, "You can go anywhere, do anything. Take advantage of this opportunity, Mia." Throughout her college years, Mia gradually found herself. She learned to blend in, make new friends, and focus on building her future. The calls home were mostly with David because her mother was always too busy with Ben. "Ben is going through a tough time," David said during a phone call. "My mother does not allow you to impose any discipline. I tried, but..." His voice was sad, as if he was giving up trying to keep his family in balance. Mia's visits to her home became more and more sparse, and each time she returned, she noticed the distance between herself and her mother more clearly. Ben, now an adult, completely lives in his own world with video games and unreliable friends. The house that David had tried to maintain was now becoming messy and lifeless. After graduating, Mia took her first job at a consulting firm and moved to West Virginia. David remained in constant contact, always asking and encouraging her. But just 2 years later, a call from her mother causes Mia's world to collapse. "David is dead," her mother said, her voice full of emotion. "He died of a heart attack while working." The announcement left Mia in a state of stunned, realizing that the only person who had ever actually stood by her was no longer there. The news that David died of a sudden heart attack caused Mia to fall into a state of shock. The stepfather who always supported and loved her like a biological child is now gone. During the funeral, her mother sobbed, but Mia couldn't help but feel that those tears were not only for David, but also for worries about the family's financial future. David was the only economic breadwinner, and when he died, Mia's mother quickly fell into crisis. "Lily, I need your help," she said in a call after the funeral. "The cost of living is too big, and I don't know how to manage it." Mia could feel the despair in her mother's voice, and although she was a little hesitant in her heart, she couldn't refuse. Mia started sending $1,500 a month to help her mom and Ben stay afloat. She sacrifices personal desires, such as buying a larger apartment or saving for the future, to ensure that the family does not fall into difficulties. But every time she visits home, Mia only finds things worse. Ben, now 20 years old, is not trying to change. He spent the day glued to the computer screen or lounging on the sofa, while his mother continued to argue. "You know, Ben is very sensitive. It takes time to find its way." Despite Mia's financial support, she realizes that she can't change the injustice in the way her mother treats her and Ben. The dissatisfaction grew, and Mia gradually understood that her sacrifices would never be appreciated. After David's death, Mia tries to take on the role of financial support for the family. Every month, she sends $1,500 to help her mother cover living expenses and take care of Ben. Every time she sees the deduction in her account, she tells herself that this is the right thing to do, even if it means giving up on her personal dreams. However, every time she visits home, Mia feels like her efforts fall into an endless void. Ben, now a young adult, still doesn't work, doesn't study, but spends all day playing games and drinking beer. The house was a mess, the furniture was broken and not repaired, and Mia's mother didn't seem to see any problems with Ben's way of life. "I know Ben needs time to figure out where to go," her mother would say, ignoring all of Mia's advice. The situation culminates when Mia discovers that her mother has made a will to leave all the property to Ben. Once, when she was visiting home, she heard Candy, Ben's girlfriend, sneering. "This house belongs to Tommy. Your mother has left it all to him." When confronted, her mother bluntly admitted, "Yes, everything will belong to Ben. He needs them more than you," she said, his eyes cold. That sentence was like a knife piercing Mia's heart. Over the years, she has sacrificed and tried to help, but in the end, she is just an outsider in her own family. Mia understands that this is not only a betrayal, but also the end of all hopes of recognition and love. The decision to cut ties with her mother and Ben became clearer than ever. Mia sat motionless on the chair as her mother admitted to leaving all the property to Ben. "You need to understand," she said, her voice cold. "Ben is more special than me. It needs these things to have a good life." Those words made Mia choke. Over the years, she has sacrificed her time, money, and even her dreams to help her family. But now she realizes that all efforts are taken lightly. I deposit money every month, I repair the house, I hire someone to take care of my mother when she is sick. And Ben? He didn't do anything, Mia said, her voice choked up but determined. Mom just looked at her with cold eyes. Ben has values that I don't understand. I never love him enough. That's the moment Mia realizes that nothing she does can change the way her mother sees her. Despite her heartache, she decided to cut off the relationship. When she got home, Mia opened her phone and canceled all the automatic transfers she had sent every month. She felt a great burden lifted off her shoulders, but also the end of her relationship with her mother and Ben. Over the next few weeks, her mother kept calling, sending reproachful messages and asking her to keep sending money. But this time, Mia no longer gave in. I chose Ben. Now let him take care of me, she said in a final call before blocking all contact. By ending her dependency, Mia begins to put herself first, opening a new chapter in her life, one in which she is free to decide what is best for her. After canceling the monthly automatic transfers for her mother, Mia felt a relief she hadn't had in years. It wasn't just the end of financial support for a family that didn't appreciate her, but it was also the first time she put herself above the responsibilities she had been imposed. However, she knew that this action would not avoid backlash from her mother and Ben. Mia's mother quickly called as soon as she found out that the account was no longer receiving money. "What did you do? How dare you cancel the support money?" she shouted on the phone. Mia tried to keep her voice calm. "Mom, I've been doing it for a year, but it's all just for Ben and Candy to live comfortably while I sacrifice everything. I can't go on like that anymore." Her mother began to use familiar reproaches. "You are a selfish child. Ben needs my help, and I'm just hurting my family." But this time, those words no longer had an impact on Mia. "You don't hurt your family, Mom," she replied, her voice firm. "I'm protecting myself." Messages and calls from Mom and Ben flooded in the weeks that followed. Ben sends angry messages, and Candy tries to communicate through other means to blame Mia. "You're destroying your family. Your mother is suffering for you," Candy wrote on Facebook. Mia just smiled, blocked all communication from them, and felt herself regaining control of her life. With the money she used to send home, Mia began to save for her future. She opened a new savings account to prepare to buy her first home. Every month, as she watched the amount of money in her account increase, she felt the freedom she had sacrificed for so long. No more feeling of being tied down, no more sleepless nights of demanding and blaming calls. One afternoon, while walking, Mia saw a recruiting sign at a construction site. For a brief moment, she thought of taking a picture and sent it to Ben with the words, "This is the way to solve your problem." But she smiled, put the phone in her pocket, and walked on. Mia understands that freedom comes not only from cutting off toxic relationships, but also from letting go of emotions that are no longer worth holding on to. She no longer needs recognition from her mother or anyone else. For the first time in her life, she felt that she was truly in control of her future, one that was not dominated by injustice or unfair responsibility. Mia has found herself again. After deciding to cut off financial ties with her mother and Ben, Mia began to feel unprecedented relief. She is no longer bound by unfair responsibilities or unreasonable reproaches. With each month that passed and the money in her account was not deducted, Mia felt like she was gradually rebuilding her life. However, that peace did not last long. Mia's mother constantly called and texted with familiar reproaches. "You're selfish. I've abandoned my family." Ben also refused to give up, sending angry messages, accusing Mia of betrayal. Ben's girlfriend, Candy, even texted on social media, calling Mia a family destroyer. Despite being attacked from many sides, Mia remained steadfast in her decision. "It's not your fault," she told herself. "Mom chose Ben, and now it's their turn to take responsibility for their lives." With the money she used to send home, Mia began to save for the future. She opened a savings account, gradually preparing to buy her first house. Instead of feeling pressured and burdened, Mia felt freedom for the first time, a freedom that comes from putting herself first. One day, as she passed by a construction site with a sign that said hiring, Mia thought of Ben. For a moment, she wanted to take a picture and send it to him as a reminder that anyone can work to be independent. But but she just smiled and walked on. It's not my problem anymore, she told herself. Mia realizes that true freedom doesn't just come from escaping toxic relationships, but also from letting go of negative emotions. No longer having to sacrifice for those who don't appreciate her, Mia feels that she is truly in control of her life for the first time. The future ahead, although unclear, is full of hope. Mia has found herself again,